explains that about Shem Tov explains when someone wants to eat a piece of steak, piece of meat, some beer and wings. What did you say? He says really, a Jew, there's godly sparks in those wings and in that beer. But he feels he wants to eat the beer, he wants to eat the wings, he wants to drink the beer. But really, why does he want it? Because there's a godly spark that's connected to your soul. So you think you want it because the beer tastes good, but really your soul wants it because your soul has a connection to that item that you need to elevate the holiness that's in it. So it says sometimes Rosh Hashanah, this is how we daven for physical things a whole year. How does that fit when you're like a slave standing in front of the king asking for, you're crowning the king. So what are you asking at the same time? Give me this, give me this, give me that. So the Rebbe says all the asking for physicality is really for the sake of God, to make the world a dwelling place for God. So you think you want a good year because you think about yourself, but really it's all for the sake of God. Just like the Baal Shem Tov says. So basically, you think you're here for the beer, you're here for the wings, you're here for the Torah. Okay, l'cham.
All right. Very good. We'll see you same time next week.
That was just a joke. He made the joke. Okay, today the Rebbe every year, a few times a year, would write a letter with a very interesting title. Who is he writing the letter to? Who is he writing the letter to? The Rebbe would write a letter. El bnei ubnei Yisrael b'chol makom shehem, to the sons and daughters of Israel wherever they are in the world. There's a letter written to every single Jew. I would write before Rosh Hashana 2 letters, sometime, and before Pesach. Those were the 2 main times I know that I would write a letter. What else? Let's see. Yeah, those 2 times a year. Maybe before Shavuos, depends, whatever. So now, this year, that Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, the Rebbe, which before I came here, interesting, I prepared for this year in my house. I went through the 2 letters of the Rebbe to all of the Jewish people explaining the uniqueness of this year. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. And my sister-in-law was in the house, and she's like, I heard that a year that Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, it's a very scary year, and ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. So I'm like, oh, no. You see the difference between, like, it's not a joke, the Rebbe and the world. The Rebbe, Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos. You have no idea how great this is. This is like the greatest year ever. Other people, they're busy freaking everyone out. That Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos, go piss in your pants. And the Rebbe is telling you how great it is. So
why is it bad? Because you can't blow shofar.
And people try to say this happened, and they try to make all of these connections of years. And Rosh Hashanah came out on Shabbos, whatever. But that's not the Rebbe's view, and not the view of Chassidus at all. And like we're going to see, the Rebbe is going to explain now what is the uniqueness, how special it is a year that Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos. So the first thing. Okay, so the first thing, the Rebbe starts off the letter. Before he gets into that, the Rebbe is writing this letter on Chai Elul. What's Chai Elul? Chai Elul is the birthday of the 2 greater luminaries. Just like on Wednesday, the first Wednesday, today is Wednesday. What happened on Wednesday? God hung up 2 big luminaries, the sun and the moon in the heaven. So too, regarding the Chai Elul, they use the same exact term, that God put up the 2 luminaries, which is, on this day was the birthday of Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Chassidus, the year Nachas, and the birthday of the Alter Rebbe was also on the exact same day in the year of Kahos. So that's number one, the uniqueness of the day. The Rebbe said today he's writing this letter. Now it says that the last 12 days of the year starts off from Chai Elul, is connected to the 12 months of the year. 12 months of the year, which means you have 12 days. The first day of the 12 days is connected to the month of Tishrei. You're meant to, the month of Elul in general, you're meant to make, it's called Chodesh HaCheshvan, the month of thinking over how did you act in the past year, and how could you correct yourself for the upcoming year, how you prepare yourself for the upcoming year. So Chai Elul is connected to Rosh Hashana. Tishrei, the whole passage, and also preparation for the upcoming year, the month of Tishrei. And then the next day, Yutas Elul is connected to Cheshvan, Chof Elul is connected to Kislev, and when I read the Sled Hashkacha Pratis, my brother's getting married on Chof Elul, which the Rebbe's wedding was on Yudalit Kislev. I thought Hashkacha Pratis, it came out on Chof Elul, which is connected to the month of Kislev. The Rebbe's wedding in the month of Kislev. So yes, combination of Elul, which today was actually the wedding of the Rebbe Rashab on the Gimel Elul, and 2 days ago was the wedding of the Frierdiker Rebbe was Yud Aleph Elul. The Rebbe Rashab, I'm sorry, the Rebbe Rashab was Yud Aleph Elul, and the Frierdiker Rebbe was Yud Gimel Elul today. I'm sorry, yesterday. So so Chof Elul is connected to Kislev. Whatever, it's connected to the wedding of the Rebbe also. Just whatever, side point. Close enough, yeah. So the point is, we're right now, right before Rosh Hashana, the Rebbe is saying. We're by the last stage of preparing for Rosh Hashana. The last 12 days is like, bottom line, right before Rosh Hashana. So now, it says the Rebbe, it's the best time to think. And how are we going to prepare ourselves for Rosh Hashana? And the Rebbe says, it's self-understood that whatever we're thinking about to prepare ourselves for Rosh Hashana, this needs to affect our life and our thought, speech, and action. Which that's the whole purpose of whatever the Rebbe is saying over here. Whatever he's going to be talking about, and it needs to affect our general avodah. What's our avodah? It says the world stands on 3 pillars. Torah, avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. Prayer, or avoid is the avoid in the Beis Hamikdash. Now it's prayer, Torah, learning Torah, and acts of kindness. Okay, so now one of the main points of Rosh Hashanah this year is that Rosh Hashanah falls out on Shabbos. The first day of Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos. Now, first of all, many times the Rebbe points out, what does it mean Rosh Hashanah? Why is it called Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year? It's not called Tchilas Hashanah, the beginning of the year. It's the head of the year. Just like the head affects the whole entire body, the life of the whole body comes from the head. The head is controlling the body. So to this day of the year needs to have an effect. And it does affect, but we need to also, there's the way how it affects automatically, but then there's the lessons that we need to take out of Rosh Hashanah and apply that for the whole entire year. And it needs to affect every day of the year, every month of the year, every week of the year, the whole upcoming year. The good achlatas that we take upon ourselves at Rosh Hashanah, it needs to be like the head that gives life to the whole body, to the whole entire year. Now, what's Shabbos unique? The Rebbe says we see the day of Shabbos has in it 2 opposite points, seemingly. 2 fundamental opposite points. First of all, Shabbos is, number 1, holy. It's called Shabbos Kodesh. Shabbos Kodesh, Shabbos Kodesh. It's called Shabbos Kodesh. What does Kodesh mean? The literal meaning of Kodesh means separated. Kedusha means separated. Avdallah. It's a separated day from the whole week. It's not like a regular day. It's a holy day.
What does Avdallah have to do with Kedusha?
The literal meaning of Kedusha, we people say holiness, but the literal meaning of Kedusha, you have Kedusha even in a negative form. But Kedusha means separate. Something that
means
separate, exactly. So it's
Right.
Havdil means it's separate. Shabbos is separate from all the other days of the week. It's a day, it's a holy day, it's a day that's penetrated also with holiness. The Rebbe says holiness symbolizes on something that's higher. It's something that's separate. It's higher, it's exalted. Kedusha, Lashon, Avdallah. Kedusha means it's separate. So that's in general. You have Kedusha, you have a carbon is Kodesh, you have many different things that are Kodesh. Especially the Kedusha of Shabbos, the Rebbe says, it's the highest level within Kedusha itself. And the different types of Kedusha, you have this type of Kedusha, that type of Kedusha. Shabbos is even a higher level within Kedusha itself. It's a Kedusha, it's a holiness that's higher than the whole entire world, higher than the whole Bria. Therefore, the holiness of Shabbos is manifested, first of all, This that a Yid takes off the whole week. He tut sich ois, the Rebbe says. He undresses himself from worldly matters. Not to do any work, not to do any worldly weekday work. Like the pasuk says, "L'taser kol malacha." You shouldn't do any malacha. You shouldn't have to deal with uvdin dachol, with weekday, with mundane actions. Vachadikait in a redin or the raful in machshav, a person shouldn't be dealing with worldly weekday actions, speech, and even thoughts. It says in Shulchan Aruch. The way you act on Shabbos is not the way you act during the week. The way you speak on Shabbos, you shouldn't be speaking about certain things on Shabbos, and even your thoughts on Shabbos need to be Shabbosdik. So we see, first of all, Shabbos is associated with separating yourself from the whole world. The whole world. It's a kedusha that's higher than the world. It says holiness that's above the world. You're not doing mundane weekday stuff. No uvdin dachol, no malacha, no talking, no thinking. It's of the week. It's a holy day. And the Rebbe says, what are you filling up your time with? Okay, so the guy's not doing malacha on Shabbos. So what is he doing? Sitting bored out of his kishkas doing nothing? No. The Rebbe says he fills up the time of Shabbos when the guy is free from worldly actions, talking and thinking, with adding in serving of Hashem, adding in actions of Shabbos, which is, says the Rebbe, in Shurim and Torah, adding in serving God with his heart and his thought, to daven with more kavanah, to prepare to davening even more. Like it's known in general, Chassidim on davening was a different davening on Shabbos than the week. The Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya that a person that's a businessman is not allowed to be a chazan in shul during the week. Why not? Because the guy's rushing to work, and he's going to come and daven by the, and then he's out the door, and then the whole minyan took exactly 10 minutes and 15 seconds, and the whole davening was like, I don't know what. Like, you do 2-speed, 3-speed. If you pay premium on YouTube, you can do it whatever. That's the way a businessman is davening. And davening needs to be on one. How do you call that? The regular speed.
We just want to skip the commercial. That's all.
No commercials. That's all the singing that they have over here in Shul. But that's only on Shabbos.
So who is a good chazan?
So he says a guy that's not the guy that doesn't need to work. A guy that's I don't know what, sitting and learning all day. A guy's a coil guy sitting down. He says a guy that wants to go to work.
Someone's retired.
The guy's retired or whatever it is. A guy that doesn't
Trust
need
fund?
trust fund or whatever it is. A guy doesn't need to. A guy doesn't need to go run. Doesn't have to be in his office at 9 o'clock. So until a bigger gets him in, it's already 8:45 instead of 8:30, right? So or 8:50 or 8:55. So now a guy submit his office in 5 minutes, and he wants to daven for the Amud. So what he's going to do? He's going to daven in 5 minutes. So who should daven for the Amud? The Alter Rebbe says someone that's doesn't need to go to work. So the guy doesn't care. He doesn't need to be anywhere 9 o'clock. Doesn't need to be anywhere 9:15. He can take his time. You want to be in your office in 5 minutes, daven in 5 minutes, and leave. But don't make the whole minute. Don't mess up the whole minyan in 5 minutes. But the Alter Rebbe says on Shabbos is different. It says even a business guy, he has nowhere to work. A business guy that has no rush, even on Shabbos, he's obligated to add in his preparations for davening, to learn more chassidus, to add in his meditation, to spend his time davening. The Rebbe once said, even a business person, even if he goes to sleep in his talis, he's just sleeping over there on the table, and people think that he's meditating, is also good. At least he's making an impression. His kids looking at him, they see him in his talis for 3 hours. They don't know that he's chrapping away over there, but at least they think, he's meditating on Ma'amar Chassidus. But the point is, Shabbos is associated with separating yourself from weekday actions, mundane. It's kodesh, it's a holy day, and filling it up with holiness. That's davening. So that's on one aspect of Shabbos. So seemingly, what's Shabbos? Shabbos is, the Rebbe is saying Shabbos has in it two opposite points. This is one point of Shabbos. Separating from the world, Kedusha. The other aspect on Shabbos, says the Rebbe, that this holiness of Shabbos is not only some spiritual holiness, like in Kippur, let's say, that you're a malach, there's no eating, no drinking, there's nothing. No. The holiness of Shabbos penetrates Gashmius until the extent that it transforms regular, mundane, weekday actions to something holy. The regular eating supper and eating meat and eating whatever becomes a mitzvah of Einik Shabbos. Like the pasuk says, "V'korosol Shabbos Einik," which means the eating, the sleep, the drinking, the sleeping, and anything else becomes a mitzvah. So we see that the holiness of Shabbos penetrates physicality. It penetrates regular things that the body does, that the body has pleasure of doing, that becomes a mitzvah, and it gets elevated to the level of Shabbos, to the holiness of Shabbos. So this is 2 points the Rebbe points out we see in Shabbos. On one hand, it's separation. You're not doing work, you're not thinking, you're not worldly things, you're not talking, you're separating yourself. Holiness, davening, learning, more shurim and Torah. On the other hand, the holiness of Shabbos penetrates physicality. It penetrates your supper, your eating, your drinking, whatever you're doing on Shabbos. The mitzvah of Einik Shabbos is not only some spiritual Einik Shabbos, it's even the physical things that someone's doing on Shabbos becomes a mitzvah. Now, just like there is the idea of Shabbos in time, the day of the week, there's the day of Shabbos, so too in people, there's the people that they're called Shabbos people, which is the Jewish people. Like we say in Avdova, like you mentioned before, Hamavdil ben Kodesh l'Choil ben Yisrael Amim. There's a connection. We're talking about how God separates 2 things. God separates the day of Shabbos from the 6 days of the week, and God separates the Jewish people from all the other nations of the world. The Jewish people, we're like the Shabbos, we're separated, we're elevated, we're higher than all the nations of the world. Just like the day of Shabbos is separated, is holier, it's on its own, it's higher, so too the Jewish people we're called a Goy Kodesh, a holy nation. Kodesh Atal Hashem Alekacha, we're holy, we're separated for God. We're separated from all the nations of the world. We say, you separated us and you elevated us. We're higher than the whole world. Just like Shabbos is higher than the whole week, the Jewish people are like Shabbos. Now, within the Jewish people themselves, it says, the Talmidei Chachamim, it says in Zoyar, and the Gemara says in Brachas, in several places, the Talmidei Chachamim are called Shabbos. Why are Talmidei Chachamim called Shabbos? Because they're busy, they're not working, they're not busy. For them, it's like Shabbos the whole week. The whole life is Shabbos. They're busy davening and learning until it says there's a certain level of Talmidei Chachamim that they're called Toirosei Umanusei. What is their work? What is their business? Their business is to sit and learn Torah the whole day. They're not doing anything else about learning. So they're even more like Shabbos. On the regular weekday, they're on the level of Shabbos. They're separated, they're higher from the weekday, from choil, from mundane, from worldly things. The Zohar HaKodesh, in the Holy Zohar, it says that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he was called Shabbos LaHashem Elokecha. He was even more the level of Shabbos, even more, all the Talmidei Chachamim are called Shabbos, but especially Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he was even a higher level of Shabbos. And the Rebbe says in general, all the leaders of the Jewish people in history, like Rashbi, they're throughout every generation. The Rebbe says till the leaders of the Jewish people in the later generations, like the birthday, those that it's their birthday today, the day the Rebbe wrote the letter, which is Chayal, the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, and the Rebbe says till the leader of our generation, the Rebbe, my father-in-law, which they're like the level of Rashbi, that within Talmidei Chachamim themselves, they're Shabbos, Sheba Shabbos. They're the level of Shabbos within Shabbos itself. Which means by these people, by these tzaddikim, they have a very great light of God, the holy light of God, which is separate, just like Shabbos is separate from all the other days of the week. They have a separate, much higher godly revelation that's shining within them and in them to the level that they're exalted, higher than everyone else in the generation. That's why they're called a Nasi. What does a Nasi mean? The Lashon is Snasus. They're elevated, they're higher. Hashbi and all the other tzaddikim that are on the level of Shabbos within the Talmidei Chachamim themselves. But on the other hand, what did we say? So as of now, what are we saying? The Jewish people are Shabbos. Within the Jewish people themselves, the Talmidei Chachamim are even more Shabbos. Within the Talmidei Chachamim themselves, you have Rashbi, the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, the Rabbeim, the Rebbe. There are even more. There are Shabbos within Shabbos. But what did we say also on Shabbos? It's not just holiness higher, separated and flying to Mars. At the same time, with this very high level of kedusha, it penetrates the physical world itself. This holiness of Shabbos is not only a very high level that's separated from the world, but this is brought into even the worldly matters, even in the world itself, till we transform the world itself, the low world itself. We make the Jewish people that we are Shabbos. Because we have the Talmidei Chachamim, we have the Rabbeim. Let's say we're going to talk about ourselves now. All the Jewish people are Shabbos. What's the job of Shabbos? To transform the eating, the drinking, to make that a mitzvah. When a guy's eating a meal on Shabbos, that's a mitzvah. The holiness of Shabbos penetrates the food that he eats. So to every Jew, he's not only a holy Jew, and how is that manifested that a Jew is holy? It's manifested in some spiritual thing. When he's davening and that's it. No, it penetrates even when he's doing work, even when he's doing business, even when he's walking in the street, even when he's eating, even when he's doing whatever. That itself becomes holy. He makes that a place where God is revealed. You see God in whatever he's doing. Like the Rebbe is going to bring out a few examples. Now the Rebbe says, this is the lesson for us for this year when Rosh Hashana is on Shabbos. What does that mean? Rosh Hashana, the head of the year, the head affects the whole entire body, which means it affects all the days of the year. It affects all the months of the year, the weeks of the year, all the months of the year, the whole entire year. So now this year, a regular year, Rosh Hashanah falls out on a Monday, on some other day of the week. Not necessarily do you have this idea, this Shabbos idea that it penetrates the whole year. This aspect of Shabbos that we said, what is it? On one hand, it's a great, very high level of holiness. At the same time, that holiness itself penetrates physicality. This year, what's the first day of the year? Shabbos. That means our whole entire year needs to be a Shabbos year. What does that mean? This whole year needs to be a Shabbos year. That holiness, first of all, the Rebbe says that this year we need to have these two aspects. The Rosh Hashanah needs to affect the whole year. We need to have two aspects of ourselves. On one hand, we need to have this idea of Shabbos, that it's a holy year. It's separated from the world, which means that we have to first of all, the Rebbe says, we need to penetrate the whole year that it should be a Shabbos year. First of all, to add in holiness. What does that mean? Shabbos is separated from the rest of the days of the week. It's a holy day. We need to add it this year in adding a new hider in mitzvah. So guys, going to add to be careful in a mitzvah, to set up a new time to learn Torah, to set up a new kvis. He's going to add to learn Torah every Wednesday night. He's going to come to the shir over here. Or every day he's going to add a few minutes to learn Torah. That the add in his davening and those gleich. And the Rebbe gives very simple examples. Shabbos is to separate yourself from the world, to add in holiness. Every Jew needs to add in himself more holiness in his life, more kedusha, more Shabbos, more separation, something more that has to do with godliness. Whatever is each person on his level to add, to be careful in another mitzvah, something, whatever it is, at least something small, but you're adding in this holiness of Shabbos. At the same time, this holiness of Shabbos, what did we say? This needs to penetrate the world itself, the worldly matters that someone does. Says the Rebbe, every Jew, a man or a woman, a young person, an old person, he needs to bring this Shabbos, this holiness of Shabbos, even in his weekday, in his mundane actions that he does. A guy's regular weekday, regular Monday, regular Tuesday, regular Wednesday, you need to bring in Shabbos into that also, which means the kedusha of Shabbos, the holiness, godliness needs to penetrate the regular weekday, the regular Wednesday, the regular Monday afternoon needs to be penetrated with the holiness of Shabbos. Just like Shabbos is penetrated in your chicken soup, in your potato knish, so too the holiness of Shabbos is not only that you're going to add now to learn more Torah. You're going to add now because the Hashana started with the Shabbos. You're going to add in davening. It also needs to penetrate in your dealing with the world. When you're going to business, you need to feel spirituality. You need to feel holiness. Even in your regular, whatever you're doing, the things, your regular routine in your day-to-day life, you need to feel the holiness of Shabbos. Till that every single thought, speech, and action should be penetrated, that it's Shabbos. Just like on Shabbos, your thoughts, your speech, your actions are different. This year, because it starts off with Shabbos, it needs to be a Shabbos year. You need to see a difference in whatever you're doing, even in worldly matters. And the Rebbe gives, for example, when someone has a job, when someone has a business, or similar or anything else, it needs to be penetrated with spirituality, with the purpose, with the meaning, with the soul, which means the Torah says, Kol ma'asecha yu l'shem shamayim. All of your actions, whatever you're doing, it's your business, it's your job. The Rebbe is not saying now, the Rebbe is not talking about the adding and davening, learning, prayer, whatever. And whatever you're doing, it's your business, it's your job. That also needs to be penetrated with godliness. Says the Rebbe. What does that mean? The Rebbe gives a very simple. The Rebbe says a guy is working. How could he make his regular business, working in Bank of America, digging in the holes and whatever any one guy has over here, whatever your job is? How do you make that holy? Says the Rebbe gives a simple job. You have to know, why am I doing this? Why am I working? Why am I trying to make more money? What do I need money for? Says the Rebbe. I should be able to give more tzedakah. Guy tells himself, why am I working now? Why am I making money? I should be able to have money to give tzedakah. Or the Rebbe says, I should have a ruika cup, the Rebbe says, to have a peace of mind that I should be able to learn Torah. If I have 1,000 bills to pay, and I don't have any money to pay for anything, so a guy doesn't have peace of mind to just sit and learn. So a guy's not learning now. He's going to work. He's doing business. He's doing whatever business he's doing. He's not davening right now. He's not learning right now. He's working. But he knows, why am I working? That I should be able to have a peace of mind. Like that when I sit, I can sit and learn with peace of mind. Or the Rebbe says, another example, and I was surprised whatever the Rebbe says, I should be able to pay my tuition for my kids to learn.
I was thinking that first.
That's what the Rebbe says right over here. Sollen schar limit for the kinder to learn in Torah. I'm working for the sake of God. Why am I working for the sake of God? And my kids should be able to sit out to have money to pay the tuition. So that's why I'm going into business. So in order I should be able to have peace of mind, I should be able to give tzedakah. And I read it. I thought the Rebbe is going l'mayla l'mata. One level is, okay, so a guy Taka doesn't need to worry about his tuition because he has enough money for tuition. Okay, so now does a guy have enough of a peace of mind? He doesn't know if he has enough money. Maybe that he doesn't have, even though he can pay the tuition. So that's why he's working. You should be able to have the peace of mind. Okay, now you can have peace of mind, but still, because you're going to pay your bills, but you still can't give tzedakah. You still can't build buildings or pay for whatever, give tzedakah. So you're working even more than that to give tzedakah. I saw a video this week. A guy tells the Rebbe, a businessman, when this, the millionaire club, Machane Yisrael. He tells the Rebbe, you know what Machane Yisrael is? Basically, whoever gave, I think, $25,000 or whatever to Chabad houses or building yeshivas or something, he had the privilege. The Rebbe had a special sikha for those people, and the Rebbe would tell them a sikha, and then you're able to walk up to the Rebbe and say, ask the Rebbe whatever you want. So this guy came up to the Rebbe, and he said, he has enough money, and he has enough money, and he has enough money for whatever he needs, and he can even give tzedakah, and he doesn't want to work. He doesn't want to. He just wants to sit and learn all day. That's what he told the Rebbe. And is that a good idea? So the Rebbe told him no. The Rebbe said you should continue working. At the same time, you should have a kviyas itim to learn Torah. You should set aside, a lot of time with chavrushes, whatever, to learn. I don't know, chavrushes, we should for sure set aside time to learn Torah. And the Rebbe says that's going to show an example for other people that a successful businessman is davening with a million, is keeping Shabbos, is keeping kosher, is setting set times to learn. People shouldn't say, in order to make money, you have to, I don't know what, you have to work and not learn, and there's no time for minyan, no time. So you should continue. And the Rebbe said it, you're going to be surprised that it's coming from me. You would think, you're coming to the Rebbe, you're telling the Rebbe, I just want to sit and learn all day. The Rebbe is telling you, no, you should continue working. The Rebbe is saying, because that's going to affect other people, and that's going to make them continue davening and learning and whatever. But why did I see this? The Rebbe is saying you should work. Why is a guy working? In order that he should be able to give tzedakah. That's why he's working. So the guy is not worried about tuition. He's not worried about, he has peace of mind. This guy told him he has peace of mind. The Rebbe told him he should continue working. You can be able to give more tzedakah, even more tzedakah. Now the Rebbe says it's self-understood that if someone has such a mindset, his business is not going to disturb Torah, learning Torah and doing mitzvahs. If the whole reason why you're working is in order to give tzedakah, it doesn't make sense that working is going to be a contradiction to Torah and mitzvahs. So, for example, if a guy knows the only reason why I have my store is in order to give tzedakah for God's purpose. So, guy's not going to open his store on Shabbos. He knows it's not going to go to. The whole reason why he has it is for God, for the sake of God. So he's not going to open it up to fight against God. A guy's not going to go into a business that's against Torah, whatever it is, dealing with something. Because the whole reason why he has the business is for Torah, for God. So that's what the Rebbe says over here. And the Rebbe says it should be God's will that every Jew should take good resolutions and a preparation for such a Rosh Hashanah. We're preparing for a Shabbos Rosh Hashanah. A Shabbos ahead of the year that's on Shabbos that affects the whole year. That the whole year should be on Shabbos mode, which is, like we're saying over here, it's separation, it's adding in more Kedusha. At the same time, it's penetrating the regular, mundane, worldly things that we're doing, that even in that, it's done with holiness. It's not the guy's holy in shul, and he's a horse in the street. The holiness of the shul penetrates the street. And just like Shabbos, the holiness of Shabbos brings a blessing. Like it says, Shabbos is a source of blessing, and the blessing of Shabbos comes from the holiness of Shabbos. It has in it both aspects. Through Vayikadesh Oisai, through making the day holy, that brings a blessing, says the Rebbe. This, through taking on good resolutions, this will bring right away God's blessing in whatever we need, especially to be written and signed for a good year and a sweet year, physically and spiritually together, especially in the main blessing, that God, that we say in Rosh Hashanah, God hears the sound of the blowing of the shofar of the Jewish people with mercy. So God will hear, to listen to our prayers, and like the Rebbe's capital that year was the capital Peches, where there David HaMelech says, Tovi lefanachat filasi, hati oznecha lerinasi. My prayer should come in front of you. You should hear my prayer. It should come up to your face, and you should bend down with your ear to hear my singing. And God should bring the whole entire Jewish people to the complete Shabbos. Who knows when is the complete Shabbos? Whoever was in the shul over here from Rosh Chodesh Merachim till the 15th of Av heard this every single day again and again. What is the complete Shabbos? Yom Shekulei Shabbos. The time when it's going to be Shabbos forever and ever. But a year like this, that Shabbos penetrates the whole year. It's the head of the year, and it penetrates the whole year. This brings even quicker the time when it's going to be Shabbos forever and ever, the true and ultimate redemption, and it should be right away. We're going to sing it again, and then we're going to go through say the now we're gonna make whoever wants to go, whoever wants to stay. We're gonna be saying we're gonna make a psak din that Mashiach shall come this moment, and everyone should take upon themselves good resolutions in this aspect to add in these two ideas in the holiness of Shabbos, and at the same time the holiness of Shabbos penetrates all physical aspects, and the whole year should be a Shabbos year, which means to add in the holy in something in holiness, and at the same time to add that this holiness should penetrate a regular mundane day-to-day life. You should feel the holiness in whatever we're doing. Then we're going to say another very interesting aspect right after the niggin, where one can stay.
Is this in the Yiddish or Hebrew?
It's in Hebrew also. It's in both. It's an old language, Yiddish, English, Hebrew. The Rebbe wrote this on Chai Elul, Chai Elul, Tovshin Memtes, 1989.
Can you send it to
I'll
me?
send it to you.
I want to read it.
I'll do.
Yeah. This is the Rebbe's talks of the year 1990. The year 1990, Rosh Hashana came out on Shabbos.
I see it's in Yiddish.
Right. So I read it. I read it before. They translated. We're gonna sing it again. You want it? I'll send it. You want the letter in English? The Rebbe.
Where you get the book.
The book is in. I can send you the website where you can order the set. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Yeah. It's gonna come before next year. It's gonna come this year. Okay, we're gonna. There's another point in this letter. There's another point over here where the Rebbe explains why we don't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah this year. Very interesting idea. We're gonna sing it again, and then we're gonna go say another point. Ay 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 la 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 ay la 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 ay la 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 ay la 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 ay 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 I mean, really, last week's Sikha should have been tonight. The Sikha the Rebbe said that we learned last week was in regarding to being a month before Sukkot, 30 days before Sukkot, which tonight is exactly 30 days before Sukkot. So the Rebbe said that Sukkot is the time of joy, and we're coming from the wedding anniversary of the Frika Rebbe and the Rebbe Rashab, which is all connected to joy. So we have to add in joy. And the Rebbe spoke about the importance of joy in connection to bringing Mashiach. So now the Rebbe, so the first letter we just learned was the Rebbe wrote on Chai Elul on the 18th day of the month of Elul. A few days later, on the 25th of Elul, right before the 25th of Elul, the Rebbe wrote another letter. And in continuation to the first letter, explaining how this upcoming year is unique and special. That the Rosh Hashana falls out on Shabbos. The Rebbe says we smoke many times. Who am I giving this short to? Whoever's watching the video. So, yeah. So the Rebbe spoke many times that when two things come together, two things in holiness come together, each one adds to the other one, which means, for example, this year, that when the Rosh Hashana falls out on Shabbos, so Rosh Hashana adds to Shabbos and makes Shabbos on a higher level, and Shabbos, yeah, and Shabbos adds to Rosh Hashana and makes Rosh Hashana be on a Shabbos to Rosh Hashana, which means Shabbos adds to Rosh Hashana. Shabbos adds something to Rosh Hashana that Rosh Hashana doesn't have on its own. It makes the Rosh Hashana reach to be on a higher level. It's a Rosh Hashana that falls out on Shabbos. And the Rebbe brings the example. Or not the example. The Rebbe says we see that when the Rosh Hashana falls out on Shabbos, you don't blow shofar. Which means Shabbos adds to Rosh Hashana. It makes Rosh Hashana different. The Shabbos affects the Rosh Hashana. So that is going to explain. That's one aspect. Another aspect when Rosh Hashana falls out on Shabbos is that Rosh Hashana adds to Shabbos and makes Shabbos on a different level. It makes Shabbos be even higher than what it is on its own. Because within Shabbos itself, there's many levels. There's one level of Shabbos and a higher level of Shabbos. So Rosh Hashana makes Shabbos be even on a higher level of Shabbos. So there's what Rosh Hashana adds and gives to Shabbos, and there's what Shabbos adds and gives to Rosh Hashana. Now the Rebbe says, in order to understand more the connection between Shabbos and Rosh Hashana, the Rebbe brings out that there's a common denominator. There's a certain point that makes Shabbos. Just 1 second. Anyone want this meat? I'm not going to eat so much. It's a big piece. No, I'm not thinking. I mean, I wasn't thinking you in general. I'm not eating such a fat piece of meat.
I was thinking of having some meat.
Yeah, so take. No, I said I'm cutting it. I don't want so much.
Yeah, I think
I don't mind. Chaim. Whoever wants, come here. Come, Yoni, take. Yeah, I'm going to give it. I don't want so much. I'm looking at it, and I think it's a waste of for me taking such a big piece. No, I'm saying I don't want it to go to the garbage. That's why I want to give it to someone else to eat it. I can't eat so much. I have a little stomach. I think you know that, Mordechai, right now, no?
Huh?
I think you know that I have a little stomach.
I literally didn't want a big piece either. I wanted a small piece like that. Thank you.
Okay.
Even though my stomach is small,
yeah, okay, that's for you. Okay, so let's continue over here. The Rebbe says like this. There's a common denominator between Shabbos and Rosh Hashana. There's a certain common point. What's this same point that there is in Shabbos and Rosh Hashana? Okay, what's the idea of Rosh Hashana? Anyone know? What's Rosh Hashana? The main idea of Rosh Hashana is it's the day that we crown God as king. like it's emphasized in all the prayers of Rosh Hashanah. We ask God, God rule over the whole world, reveal your kingdom. We say HaMelech HaKadosh, the King, the Holy King, the whole focus on Rosh Hashanah is on crowning God as King over the whole world and over everything. That's one point of Rosh Hashanah. Now, this idea of crowning God as King, how does it get accomplished? So now, just like by a regular king, how does a regular king become a king? A regular king becomes a king through the nation nullifying themselves to the king. When everyone nullifies themselves to the king, when everyone tells the king, King, we're nullified to you, we're giving ourselves up to you. Whatever you want, we're going to do. We don't exist. Bittul. When we're mavatal ourselves to the king sees, wow, they're devoted to me. Then the king accepts their nullification. He accepts he sees how much they're nullified him, and then he accepts upon himself to be the king and rule over them. So too, the main avodah on Rosh Hashanah is that we make ourselves God's slaves, God's servants. We nullify ourselves to God, and we crown God. We bow down to God. We make God a king over the whole world. Like we see, the first Rosh Hashanah in history. What happened on the first Rosh Hashanah in history? What happened? First Rosh Hashanah was the day Adam Rishon was made. What did Adam Rishon do? It says Adam Rishon went around all the creations of the world, and he said, everyone, let's bow down to God. Bow down. Let's nullify ourselves to God. Let's bend our heads to God. Let's crown God as king. That's what Rosh Hashanah is. Nullifying ourselves and crowning God as king. This is the same idea. What's the day of Shabbos? When we don't work, we stop. We stop living our regular day-to-day life. We freeze from our worldly matters and we nullify ourselves to God. It's a day that we focus on God. It's a day that we don't work, this makes us, this engraves and ingrains and penetrates our whole system, that we understand that what God made the world. And because God made the world, therefore, because God made the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day, God rested. So too, that's why I'm resting. So when a guy's not working on Shabbos for a whole day, the point of not doing work on Shabbos is for us to remember about God, and nullify ourselves to God and crown God as king. So the idea of Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah is the same idea. Do the recognition of God and the nullification to God. And the Rebbe says Shabbos is even stronger than Rosh Hashanah to a certain aspect. Why? It says the holiness of Shabbos exists on its own. Without a year doing anything, Shabbos is holy. Which means Shabbos, you count 6 days, the 7th day is Shabbos. And you continue again and again, going through this cycle. That's what the holiness of Shabbos is. Shabbos is not a day. Rosh Chodesh, we were just learning about sanctifying the new moon, right? Who makes the month? Who makes Yom Tov? The Sanhedrin. Because they sanctified what day Yom Tov is, what day Rosh Chodesh is, that affects, what day Rosh Hashanah is, what day Yom Kippur is, what day Sukkot is, what day Shavuos is. Who makes the holiness of the Yom Tovim? The Jewish people. Who makes the holiness of Shabbos? You don't need a Jew to make Shabbos holy. Shabbos is already holy. Shabbos is automatically holy, which means Shabbos is a much stronger holiness than Rosh Hashanah. It's a holiness that comes from God on His own. It's there, ready or not. I'm here. The holiness of Shabbos is there automatically. The Rebbe says the holiness of Shabbos makes a Jew in front of his face. That's what Shabbos is. Now this year, when Shabbos and Rosh Hashana comes out on the same day, there's a double bittul over here. It's a much stronger nullification. It's not just a nullification of a regular Rosh Hashana. It's a Rosh Hashana that comes out on Shabbos. The Shabbos affects the Rosh Hashana. The nullification of Rosh Hashana is taken to a different level when it comes out on Shabbos. And the Rebbe says this, the Rebbe explains, with a slave, the nullification of a slave to a king, there's two levels. There's one nullification of a slave to a king, that the slave feels, I'm a slave, I exist. And I'm nullifying myself to the king. It says a slave is always nullified to its master. Even a slave for a regular person doesn't own anything. He doesn't exist. He's completely bottled. A regular slave has complete bittul. It says whatever a slave acquires, it doesn't belong to him. It belongs to his master. Kol masher kana eved kana rabbi. Whatever a slave finds, acquires, doesn't belong to him, belongs to his master. That is one level of nullification. There's a level of a nullification of a slave to his master, but the slave still exists. It's that I exist, and I'm nullified to my master. Then there's a much higher level that the slave doesn't feel any existence on its own. He doesn't feel that he exists on its own. He's nothing. He doesn't even feel that he's a slave. Because a slave is still something. He exists as a slave. The higher level of bittul is that there's nothing besides for the king. There's not a slave of the king. You're a slave and you exist as a slave. Then there's that you don't even exist as a slave. There's nothing else but the king himself. That's a much higher level of bittul. And the Rebbe explains now why Rosh Hashana that comes out on Shabbos, you don't blow shofar. Like this year. Why don't you blow shofar on a year like this year when Rosh Hashana falls out on Shabbos? The Rebbe says by us not blowing shofar, the not blowing of the shofar is not just a passive state. You can't blow shofar because it's Shabbos. So you're just not blowing shofar and you're just continuing on and doing everything else. No. Not blowing shofar is bringing out level of bittul. When someone is blowing shofar, what does that mean? That means it's like, the Rebbe says there's two levels of bittul. There's one level, two levels of bittul of a slave to his king. One level is I exist, I'm a slave, I exist. I'm a slave of the king. I'm nullified to the king. I am nullified to the king. So you're starting off with the I. I'm here. The iPod and the iPad and the iPhone. So there's the I. First of all, there's the I. And then there's the whatever. There's I exist. Then there is a higher level that there's no slave. There's nothing. The slave doesn't feel that he exists. He feels that he doesn't feel like anything. He feels that he doesn't exist. He feels that he doesn't exist. It's not that I exist. There's nothing but the king himself. There's nothing besides for the king himself. What does that mean? We feel that there's nothing else besides for God himself. So we feel that God's king, what makes God a king? It's not through our avodah. What's making God a king? Regular Rosh Hashana, when we blow shofar, we feel that we're making God as a king through us blowing shofar. We exist. We are blowing shofar. Tamlichuni aleichem, God asks us, please accept me to be your king. Make me a king over you. How? Through shofar. Tamlichuni aleichem b'meh b'shofar. So by us belonging to shofar, we feel that we exist. We are crowning God as king. That's not the higher level of bittul. A higher level of bittul is that we feel that God's already a king. He's a king without us. Like this reminds me right away of very geschmack of Nekuda. It says, Ein melech b'lo yam. There's no king without a nation. The nation makes the king a king. The king needs the people to crown him as a king. If they don't accept him, if they don't crown him, he's not a king. So the Rebbe Rashab explains that that's by the king of all the other tribes. But by the kings of the house of David, God makes them a king. And they don't need the people to accept them as a king. They're called, there's a melech al yidei ha'am, and there's a melech ba'etzim. The Rebbe Rashab explains. There's a melech that comes a king through the people. They make him a king. If they're not going to make him a king, he won't be a king. Then there's a king that he's a king already. He doesn't need you. He's already a king because God made him a king. And that's the way it's by the kings of the house of David. He says, David HaMelech, the Rambam writes, he was Zoicha Bekeser Malchus. It says there's 3 crowns. There's a crown of, or there's really 4 crowns, but it says there's a crown of Keser Torah, Keser Kohuna, and Keser Malchus. There's a crown of Torah, the crown of Kohuna, and the crown of Malchus. The crown of Malchus, the Rambam says, the Torah says, David HaMelech got it. He got it. God gave it to him. The crown of a kohen, of being a kohen, the Aaron HaKohen got it and his descendants. Which means a kohen is a kohen no matter what. He doesn't need to do anything to become a kohen. You're born to the Kohanim family, you're automatically a kohen. Doesn't David HaMelech, God made him a king. People accept him, don't accept, doesn't make a difference. God made him the king. He says the crown of Torah, that's anyone that wants can take it. Whoever's gonna devote himself to the Torah, he'll get the crown of Torah. It's up to you. It's free for all, basically. But the point we're saying over here is, I'm connecting it over here, the same idea. The Rebbe is saying in God being a king, there's two aspects. There's the aspect of a regular year that we crown God as king. We make him as a king through our avodah. Then there's a higher bittul that we feel that we're standing in front of the king. Why don't we whisper by Shemoneh Esrei? Why don't we open up our mouth? Why don't we scream? Because Shemoneh Esrei is just standing face to face to God, and we feel that we don't have we can't open up our mouth. We can't show any sound. We can't show any voice. We're completely nullified to God. It's a complete bittul, so we're not raising our voice. Rosh Hashana falls out on Shabbos. The Rebbe explains that it's a much higher bittul to God, that we feel God is already a king, that we're so penetrated that God is already a king. He is a king, and it's not dependent on us. And therefore, we can't blow shofar. We're not blowing shofar. It's not that just this year we're not blowing shofar, we're moving on. No, we're intentionally not blowing shofar because we can't blow shofar. Not because we're scared that someone's going to carry the shofar to the street and therefore we're not blowing shofar. Because it's Shabbos. And it's such a high level of bittul, such a high level of nullification to God. And Shabbos is holy on its own. And it doesn't need us to make Shabbos holy. And then when that gets combined with Shabbos, God is a king on its own. And there's nothing else but God. So the Rebbe is saying such a year like this year is brought out a much, much higher and deeper level of our nullification, our bittul to Melech Malach HaMelachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the King of all kings, blessed is he. And the Rebbe said in the previous letter that we learned or another letter of the Rebbe before this one, the Rebbe explains that the Rosh Hashana is the head of the year. The head of the year needs to affect the body. The head affects the whole body. It gives life to the whole body. Rosh Hashanah needs to affect the whole year. So the ideas of Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh, the head of the year, We need to feel it in the whole entire year, throughout all the days of the year, the weeks of the year, the months of the year. We need to feel the head that is giving life to the whole body. So the point in the other letter that Rebbe brought out was that Shabbos has in it two aspects, that it's, on one hand, it's holiness. It's totally harder than the world. Shabbos Kodesh, it's separated, it's separation, it's Havdalah. You're separating yourself from Uvdin Dachol, from worldly matters, from Malacha, from anything. It's just separating. You're not allowed to think, talk, think, talk, or do like you do during the week. But on the other hand, this holiness of Shabbos is not only a spiritual holiness, it penetrates physicality. You're eating, your mundane eating, you're eating a meal, is a mitzvah of eating Shabbos. You're sleeping on Shabbos, is a mitzvah of sleeping on Shabbos. You're drinking, it's a mitzvah to drink on Shabbos. You're fulfilling the holiness of Shabbos penetrates the world. So the Rebbe says so too. This needs to affect the whole year. That on one aspect, the person needs to add in the holiness, which means he needs to add in another hidden in a mitzvah. He needs to add in more kavanah and davening. He needs to add in more Torah, tefillah, stuck, whatever it is. That's one aspect. On the other hand, just like Shabbos penetrates physicality, a person needs to, this holiness needs to penetrate his regular weekday routine, his day-to-day life, that he needs to feel the holiness in whatever he's doing. Just like you're eating, sleeping on Shabbos is holy. So you're eating and sleeping and whatever you're doing during the year, in the weekdays, needs to be felt that it's holy. And the Rebbe said simply, a guy's working, a guy's a job, a guy's a business. A guy's working. Why is he working? Why is he trying to make money? He should be able to give tzedakah. He should be able to pay, what did the Rebbe say, to give tzedakah. He should be able to have peace of mind, that he should be able to sit and learn Torah. He shouldn't learn Torah with worries on his head. He should be able to pay the tuition for his kids. So his whole working is for the sake of God. So this holiness is penetrating his regular life, his regular day-to-day life. The Rebbe, in this letter, it says the same. The Rebbe says, just like we said in the previous level, that the head of the year needs to penetrate the whole year. So this aspect also of Rosh Hashana, which is, and when Rosh Hashana falls out on Shabbos, Rosh Hashana, which is a nullification to God. We're crowning God as a king, so we're nullifying him and crowning him as king. When it falls out on Shabbos, what does that mean? That we feel that we feel that we're nothing. We feel that there's only God. And he doesn't even need us to crown him because he's already a king. We feel like we're standing in front of the king, in front of the king's face when you can't open your mouth. Can't say anything. You're so to speak, I don't know if the right word is petrified, but you're totally not, you feel you're nullified to the king.
Lost for words.
I remember, I think I said this over here. The Rebbe told my father to learn Tanya by heart. My father learned the first 12 chapters of Tanya by heart. He lived in Israel. And there was a Jew who came from Russia, and he told him that he learned 12 prakim, first 12 chapters of Tanya by heart. Rabbi Friedrich Rebbe says you should learn by heart. So my father said, he wants to be like him. So he sat as a 12, 13, 14-year-old, and he learned it by heart, the first 12 chapters.
And you remembered it, the whole thing?
Yeah, remember the word for word. Wow. Now he went into a private audience with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him, you're writing to me that you know 12 chapters of Tanya by heart. Now, because you're 14 years old, so you should know 14 prakim by heart, but the Rebbe says you should know it by Yud Beis Tammuz. So he went on the Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. So the Rebbe gave him 12 days to learn another, 2 chapters of Tanya.
Whoa, no way.
No, that's the day my father got engaged. Engaged. His anniversary, we said last week, was Vav Elul.
The engagement is the same as you said.
The day that story happened, this is like a difference of 20 years earlier, but yeah. But the Rebbe told him he should know 14 prakim. So he said he went to camp then, and he had no breaks, no basketball, no playing. Like right after this, he just sat down and he learned Tanya until he learned it by heart, and he made it in time. And he didn't stop. He continued, and he said he learned 28 chapters of Tanya by heart.
Whoa.
And he said when he learned it, he knew it word for word, literally like verbatim, very, very good. He said he could tell you, he remembered where it was on the page, it was on this page at the top.
He kept reading
it was like in his mind. And he used to learn. He said every day he did 2 lines of Tanya by heart. Now he went into Yechidus again, and then the Rebbe says, "Oh, you're writing to me, 28 chapters of Tanya by heart." So the Rebbe said, "No, the Rebbe said, okay, so start off chapter 23. I want to hear you. I want to test you." So my father was like surprised. So first of all, my father told me that in Yechidus, he never opened his mouth. People didn't open their mouth. He was trying to explain me like the feeling, and I felt it a little bit, but I wasn't there to feel it. He said you're there by yourself with the Rebbe in his room, and the doors closed, one on one. You didn't open your mouth. You gave the Rebbe your paper. The Rebbe read what you wrote, and the Rebbe gave you, your answers. My father, it's interesting. I'm saying it. My father told me, remember, as a bocher, he always wanted to ask the Rebbe certain things. He had certain struggles, as a bocher. So he said when he's going to go into Yechidus, he's going to speak to the Rebbe about it, and the Rebbe's going to. And he said when he's there in the Rebbe's room, he said he felt like, what is he, stupid? Like it's not even like it's a nonsense. It doesn't even make sense to bring it up. Like he didn't even want to open his mouth. The problem didn't exist when he was standing there in front of the Rebbe, but also he just couldn't open his mouth. Now here, the Rebbe is asking him to say Tanya once. So he was like, okay. And he started saying, and he said he started off, but he said one line, 2 lines, and then he said he already started saying chapter 13, then chapter 3, then this. He started making a whole challenge because he was too nervous, and he was and he was just until he was just quiet and he didn't say anything. And he said he was looking at the Rebbe, and the Rebbe was leaning over, closing his eyes and listening and waiting for him to continue, and waiting, and the room is quiet. And he's not continuing, and the room is just quiet, and the Rebbe is waiting and waiting and waiting until the Rebbe realized he's not going to continue. He's too this. The Rebbe picked his head up, and the Rebbe smiled, and the Rebbe said, "Very good." Even though he said, "Very good." Zayir good. You should chazer over what you learned, and then you should continue, and you should continue. So you learned to chapter 35 or something, 34, 35, whatever, you continued. But the point is, I'm just giving an example in my head, something that we could relate to. Right? What am I going to say? Standing in front of Mahavdil, the president, some clown. To give an example of an idea, standing in front of a king, and you can't open your mouth. I think the best example is standing in front of the Rebbe. He couldn't open up his mouth. He felt like you can't open it. You feel totally you don't feel that you can't open your mouth. That's it. The Rebbe says, what's Rosh Hashana that it falls out on Shabbos? It's not that we're not blowing shofar because this reason, and that's some technical reason we can't blow, but really we would have blown if this and no. Shabbos is the whole idea of Shabbos is that it's a holiness that exists on its own. God made the world in 6 days and he rested on the 7th day. The holiness of Shabbos is there automatically. It's pre-programmed even before you were created, before you did anything. It's there. And that's what Shabbos, the feeling of Shabbos is. That you're standing in front of the king, the Rebbe says. You're standing in front of the king, you feel completely nullified, and you can't even blow shofar. You can't start making sounds. It's such a deep level of being nullified to the king. Now, how does this, so Rosh Hashana, the head of the year, penetrate the body, the limbs, the whole year? How does that penetrate the whole year? That you should feel that nullification throughout the whole year. The head needs to affect the body. So the Rosh Hashana needs to affect the whole year. That you need to feel this bittul the whole year. So the Rebbe brings an example. And the Rebbe says everything needs to be brought down in action. You can talk high levels, bittul, this. It needs to be brought down in action. Ma'asim upon the Rebbe molds it in our day-to-day life of a Jew. And the action is the most important thing. And the Rebbe says a practical example for this says the Rebbe, is the klal gadol b'Torah. There's a general ruling of the whole Torah is to love your fellow Jew. To love your friend as yourself is a